DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, get a huge dose of personal initiative to go get an energy that moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together, and what you get is the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the book, the show known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is giving people their flowers while they can still smell them. There are two situations. The reason why this topic is the topic is because there are two situations that occurred recently to me. The first one was a young lady reached out to me via email, and she told me that her father was a fan of the Work on Your Game podcast and the Work on Your Game philosophy. And when she mentioned his name, I instantly recognized it because I had remembered corresponding with this man over time. And I even looked up past emails that I'd gotten from him, and they went back almost 4 years. Hearing from this guy, him just telling me that he liked some stuff and asking me about some stuff and things like that. And the reason why this young lady was reaching out to me about her father is because he had recently passed away. And she told me that her father had been such a fan of my stuff that he used to tell his daughters, this lady and her sister, about my material and how it could possibly help them because they were into sports, at least they were at the time that he had reached out. And she was just thanking me for the material that I had shared because it had helped him, the father who had passed away, become more positive. And many of the messages that I had shared that he liked, he had been sharing with his daughters he had been sharing my messages to his daughters through himself. So that was the first one that I thought of that led to this topic. And there was another situation. I'm not saying the gentleman's name because just out of respect and privacy for their family, but they're probably listening. And the other situation was a woman who reached out to me just recently, actually in my direct messages. She told me that we had never communicated before. I didn't know who she was, but she told me that I started listening to your podcast a few months ago. I was working at a job, and even though I liked the work that I was doing, I didn't like the job situation. I felt like I was being overworked and not respected, and my input wasn't being valued. But I started listening to your material, started making me feel a whole lot better mentally. I started bringing a different attitude to the work. The situation had not changed, but my attitude changed, which in turn changed the situation. So you see how that goes. And she said she was feeling a whole lot better about her work. And then one day she just decided, you know what, forget it. And she quit the job and started her own business. And her biggest problem since starting her own business was that she had too many prospects. She had too many clients, and she had to actually turn people away because she had so much opportunity coming her way. And both of those situations, now I've gotten plenty of direct messages and emails and video messages and comments from people over the years, whether it be from this podcast, from YouTube videos, blog posts, a book that I wrote, a product that somebody purchased, an online course that someone took, maybe hearing me speak somewhere, meeting me in person. I've gotten plenty of these over the years. But these two, being that they both happened in a short period of time, and talking about two real life-changing types of situations, a person passing away and hearing from someone in their family, and a person who I didn't even know who they were, but they say, you have no idea who I am, but I've been following you all this time and I've gotten so much value from you. I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate it, because they had quit their job and started a business after quitting their job, not being sure they'd be able to even keep themselves afloat. That's a huge life-changing situation, and I know what that feels like for a lot of people to go through. I've worked with many people who are in that situation. When reading those messages and just thinking about them coming in such short period of time between each other, I realized that neither of these people who had shared that message with me, both of these women, neither of them had to have told me what they told me. If this young lady who told me about her father passing away had never reached out to me, I wouldn't have wondered, hey, I wonder why this guy hasn't emailed me again, because he emailed me 2 years ago. I wouldn't have thought of it again. But because she reached out, I was thinking about this guy. She told me what she told me. And this woman who had quit her job and started her own business, and her business is going great, at least as of the time she sent me the message, she didn't have to tell me that. She could have just kept having her business go great and never said, hey, Dre, I appreciate you sharing this message. So both Both of them could have just kept it moving and doing what they were doing. But both of them sending me those messages had me thinking about what we're going to talk about here today, which is communicating. The essence of today's topic is communicating what you need to say to people while you still have the chance to do so, and not missing out on an opportunity that may not come again given the situation. Maybe that person is no longer available. Maybe you are no longer available. Maybe you are no longer thinking how you're thinking or feeling how you're feeling, and the moment passes, the opportunity passes, and you just never say those words. And then at some point, maybe further on into the future, you say to yourself, damn, I wish I had had that conversation. I wish I had communicated what I wanted to communicate with that person, and now the opportunity is gone. So today's topic, once again, giving people their flowers while they can still smell them, is all about communicating what you really need to say to the people that you need to say it to when and while you have the opportunity to do so. Point number one. Point number one, I already told you the topic, is do you want to be saying, glad I did, or I wish I had? We just talked about this a couple days ago. And it was a couple days ago, we were just talking about making sure you get out there and do what you need to do in life. And this is part of doing what you need to do. Communicating with other people is part of that. Do you want to be a person who's looking back on your life and have regrets of omission, meaning, damn, I didn't do these things, I didn't say these things, I wish I had the opportunity to do so? Or do you want to have regrets of commission? I'm glad that I did that, even if it doesn't go the way that you thought it was going to go. Even if you say something to someone that you really needed to say and it upsets them, or they get pissed off and they say something that upsets you, or they're not even trying to hear it, but you know that they heard what you said, and you're like, damn, maybe I shouldn't have said anything, but I'm glad I got it off my chest. Do you want to be the person who's wondering what could have been, or do you want to be the person who's glad that it was, even if it doesn't go perfect? There's a podcast out there called Drink Champs, and it's hosted by a DJ EFN and a rapper by the name of Nore. Now, I know him as Noriega, but he calls himself Nore now. But and they actually are based in Miami, as a matter of fact. I don't know where, but I know they're based in Miami. But one of the things about that show that Noriega says, because they always interview legends in the hip hop game, people who have been in hip hop for a while, because Noriega was back, he was rapping back in the 90s with a group called Capone and Noriega, and also himself individually. So they interview a lot of people who are from those eras. So rappers who were around in the 90s, not necessarily a lot of the newer guys, but a lot of the older guys who have been around rap for some time. And one of the things that Nori always says on the show is that the reason why we have this show is so that we can give people their flowers while they can still smell them. So we can celebrate the legends, so they can know that they are appreciated, and we don't have to wait until they pass away and there's some big funeral and everybody's doing the hashtags, and that's when we start appreciating people. And I think all of us can appreciate that sentiment, that oftentimes in life, the biggest celebrations that a person gets is when they die. I remember earlier this year, probably about 6-7 months ago, a Southern California rapper by the name of Nipsey Hussle was murdered in Los Angeles. And after he got murdered, there was a funeral for him in LA. They held the funeral at the Staples Center, and the whole place was filled up with all of these people coming to celebrate Nipsey Hussle. Now, you may not have ever even heard of Nipsey Hussle, the rapper. I was listening to Nipsey before he had passed away. I was actually listening to him probably about 7 years ago. But I remember looking at the amount of outpouring of support for Nipsey when he passed away, and I was thinking to myself, this guy, and this is no disrespect to Nipsey, I'm saying this guy didn't have this many fans when he was alive. And I'm not saying that to say that there was anything wrong with Nipsey's work, because I was a fan of Nipsey Hussle's music, but I'm thinking to myself, a whole lot of these fans immediately appeared when this guy passed away. Or maybe they were fans, but they were quiet fans. They were silent fans. They were part of the silent majority, as we say in marketing. You don't want to be part of the silent majority. You don't want there to be too much of a silent majority. Let's say this, for your life, so that the people who really appreciate you don't come out of the woodwork until you're no longer able to hear what they have to say. And you don't want to be part of the silent majority for the life of anyone that you know, whether that be a family member, a person you've done business with, a friend of yours, whoever has touched your life in some way, shape, or form, or you touch their lives, and you don't become part of the vocal minority who's speaking out and letting them know how you feel once they no longer can hear what you have to say. And that's the reason why I bring up Nori and what he did with Drink Champs, and he talks about that. Like, I gotta let people know. And I think one of the reasons that Nori does this is I remember back in, this is over 20 years ago, Nori's second solo album, which came out, this had to be probably 1998. His first song on the album, he did a dedication to his father, because his father had passed away in between the time of his first album and his second album. And one of the things that Nori says on his show, even to this day, is, because I had lost my father and I never really got a chance to have that conversation with him, now I value even more having a conversation with you guys, you rappers, you legends in the hip hop game, and make sure that you understand that I value you, and of course my audience values you because they have a listenership, letting you know that while you're still able to get it. Kanye West, another guy in hip hop, he did a song called Big Brother on his, I don't know if his second or his third album, and it was a dedication to a guy who had been his mentor in hip hop, a rapper by the name of Jay-Z, who you've heard of. But he did a song dedicated to this guy while they were both still very actively rapping. And it's something that very rarely happens these days, especially in something like hip hop, which is very masculine, or at least it was going years back. It's become a little bit more, I don't even know the word, maybe more empathetic, more feminine, I guess we can say. That's not a bad thing, but back in the 90s into the early 2000s, hip hop was a very masculine thing. So you never heard a man coming out on a song and saying, man, you have been the person who's done so much for me, you've been my idol and this. And Kanye West was the one who came out and did that. So he kind of started to pave the way for people to be a little bit more empathetic and be more in touch with that side of them and putting it out there publicly. So we're back to you now, off of Nori and off of Kanye West. You don't want to be a person who's left your music, it doesn't have to be a song, it can just be the words that you need to say to a person. Don't be a person who leaves your music inside of you in the form of words that were never spoken. Because at that point, when those words can't be spoken, when you're not around to speak them anymore, now you can never say it to who you needed to say it to. And maybe that person is not around before you're not around, and you still can't say it to who you need to say it to. And that feeling is not too good. When you have something in you that has never gotten out of you, and you come to the realization that you'll never be able to get that out of you. Point number 2. Today's topic is giving people their flowers while they can still smell them. The person that you need to say something to, understand that they may need to hear it even more than you need to say it. Let me say that one more time. Even though you may have some things that you want to say to another person, understand that they may need to hear it. They may be thirsty to hear those words even more than you are eager to say those words. So even if you feel a little bit uncomfortable saying what you know you need to say, understand that person may need it more than you are uncomfortable in giving it out, which may push you over the edge to say what you need to say. Many employees who quit jobs, they quit because they're doing a great job every single day, but they are never given a word of appreciation from a customer, from a boss, a supervisor, a coworker, anybody. Even though they're doing their job, they're showing up every day, doing the work, doing everything that they're supposed to do, nobody ever appreciates them. So you, let's say as a boss, you may think, you know what, I do want to show some appreciation to my employees who are doing a great job every single day, but you feel kind of awkward doing it. And this is especially true for us males, especially if you were socialized and conditioned to be more masculine and not let your feelings out so much. This is just kind of the environment that many of us were raised in. So it may be hard for you to give that appreciation, that verbal appreciation to another person, but understand this, as uncomfortable as it is for you, it's much more uncomfortable for the person who has never heard a word of encouragement, never heard anything positive from anybody, to finally get it from you. It will mean much more to them to get it from you than it is uncomfortable for you to say it. Zig Ziglar, a famous motivational speaker who has now passed away, he would talk about this, that sometimes he would tell stories of how he would be out and about in his life, maybe at the airport or at the local coffee shop or something, and he would give a genuine compliment to a worker, maybe the person working the counter at an airline right before the gate, the check-in gate, or the person serving him coffee at some local coffee shop or something like that. He would give that person a genuine compliment, And the person sometimes will break down and cry, or the person would tear up, or the person would just become really emotional, and they would really thank Zig for saying what he said, even though he was just a random customer, like the other thousands of people that came through that day. The reason why they would become so emotional is because they would tell Zig, look, I've been working here for 10 years, and nobody ever tells me that they appreciate my efforts. And you're a customer, you've been here for 10 minutes, and you showing me appreciation. My boss doesn't tell me that. My husband doesn't tell me that. My kids don't tell me that. The people I work with every day never give me that, and you just gave it to me and you only been here for 2 minutes. So while it may be valuable, of course, for you to say what you need to say to another person, it may make you feel good. Understand, at the same time, it may be hard for you to find the words for the person that you're talking to. Remember that their need to hear it could be just as strong as your difficulty in saying it. This is something that I talked about when we talked about understanding your ability to give needs to be, your ability to give in life needs to be equal to your ability to receive, or you can reverse that. If you want to be a great receiver, you got to be a great giver. In other words, the same way that you can be a generous person and give something to another person with no expectation of anything in return, you need to be just as gracious when someone else wants to give something to you. Don't be the type of person who anytime you're always giving things to people, but as soon as someone tries to give something to you, you have a problem accepting it. You push it away, say, no, I don't want to take it. I don't want anything for it. No. Accept whatever another person wants to give you graciously and empathetically, simply because by accepting what another person is giving you, you are giving them the opportunity to say what they need to say, or do what they need to do, or give the gift that they need to give. You reject the person's gift, you are taking away their positive vibes that they get from knowing that they gave to somebody. If you don't accept it, then you just you just stole all the joy that they would have got from knowing that they gave you something. You understand that? So you need to be just as generous as you are as a giver. You need to be just as gracious as a receiver. Or you could call it even generous to receive things, because when you receive something from someone, again, you're allowing them to feel great about the fact that they gave something to somebody. But if you push it away, whatever they're trying to give you, now you just stole all of their thunder. You stole all of their energy. You stole all of their good vibes. So make sure, again, to be a great giver, you must also be a great receiver. You can't leave things out of balance where you just want to give, but never receive anything. Or, of course, you don't want to be the person who's always receiving, but you never give anything. You need both. Receive just as graciously as you give. Their need to hear it may be just as strong as your difficulty in saying it. Point number 3, human beings. You know how we connect? We connect when we communicate. This is what allows people to break down the walls in between us that may not even be real walls. Walls are paper thin, but because we never communicate, we think there's a strong aversion between us and other people the quote other, close quote, who just has a different view, a different background, they come from a different place, maybe they have different beliefs, or at least we think they do, but we never communicated with them. So of course we can't make a connection with that person. Tony Robbins told the story of how he was doing one of his conferences. I believe he was either in California or in Hawaii. He's told the story more than once. On the date of 9/11, 2001. And when 9/11 happened, Tony, the crowd obviously found out about it. And and of course people are devastated, and some people were from New York and they were calling home and making sure everything was okay. And there was someone in the room, Tony says, who stood up and said, you know what, 9/11 was supposed to happen. Those people who passed away deserved it and they gave their reasons. And of course, there's some people who were really outraged at that. And there was a ton of tension in the room, and that's putting it lightly. But Tony said, after that person said that, he was able to get everyone to just relax, even the person who made that statement, and communicate with each other to figure out why people felt how they felt, whether that be the people who thought this guy was crazy for saying what he said, or the people who agreed with him, people who sympathized with the terrorist and the person who agreed with the terrorist and made that statement, and got everyone to communicate and actually figure out why they felt how they felt. And by the end of the day, people felt completely different about the whole 9/11 situation and about the statement that this person has stood up and made in the room, simply because Tony was able to coax everyone into communicating instead of arguing and hating each other. I guess arguing is one way of communicating, but I mean communicating in a more open way. If you were to put a never Trumper, and there's some people out there who are in the never Trump category against President Donald Trump, put one of them in a room with a person who's a MAGA supporter, and you would think they're diametrically opposed. But if you put them in the same room and force them to talk, now they could both walk in the room hating each other simply because of the groups that they represent, but they don't know anything about each other. And they could walk out of the room as friends, or at least with a mutual respect for each other. Why is that? Is it because either of them changed their mind? No. It's because either of them came in with a bunch of documentation proving that their side was the right side? Hell no. Why did they change though? It's because it's very hard to go on disliking someone or even going as far as hating a person when you've had direct communication with them, when you talk to them in a rational, reasonable way. It's really hard to hate somebody when you talk to them that way. Damn near impossible. By the same token, the basic starting point of connecting with people on any level, whether they're indifferent to you, whether they hate you, whether they already have some reason to like you, the basic starting point is just talking to people, having communication, telling people how you feel and letting them tell you how they feel. Just doing this alone solves a whole lot of problems before they become problems, and it builds us up in our relations with other people. You want to build a relationship with another person, the most important thing you must do with that person is what? Not give them gifts, not show off how great of a person you are, not tell them about your resume and all the wonderful accomplishments that you've achieved. None of those things really builds a relationship. What builds a relationship is the amount of communication between people. More communication equals a stronger relationship. Any of you out there who's online, you want to build your brand, or you want to build your audience or your tribe, or you want to have more prospects or more customers or clients or whatever phrase you use to describe them, the most important thing you must do is communicate with your audience. The more you communicate with them and the more you are open with them, or at least they feel like you're being open with them, here's what's going to happen. First of all, they're going to buy into you even more. At least those of them who are interested in your message, they'll buy into you even more because they know you're communicating openly with them. And then what will happen over time is more and more of those people will start being open with you. And they'll start communicating with you, and they'll start telling you things, and you don't even know who these people are, but they're coming to you and telling you, look, you don't know who I am, but I've been following you for this much time, and I was going through this and this, and now these things have happened since that, and I really appreciate you for it. And this is your first time ever even knowing that this person exists. But the reason why they're willing to do that is not because you're just so eloquent of a speaker, or because you have the perfect marketing vehicle, or you ran the right advertisements, or any of that shit, or because your resume is so great. None of that. The reason why people are willing to be that open with you is because they feel you're being open with them. The reason why a young lady was able to tell me about her father passing away and the impact that my material had on him and then subsequently on them was because her father had listened to the things that I said, and he felt, in his perspective, that I was being open with him specifically. Even though there are a bunch of people listening to this, only one person listens at a time. I heard a marketing and salesperson say, listen, you don't sell products to 1,000 people at once. You sell one product to one person 1,000 times. When you are talking on your vlogging or your podcast, or when you're writing an article or you're blogging or anything that you're doing, or you're talking to an audience, understand that you're not talking to 3,000 people or 30,000 or 1.5 million. You're talking to one person, because each individual who's listening to what you're saying, they're just one person, all right? They're not a group of people. Each individual is listening to you. When I go and give a speaking engagement, I give a keynote speech somewhere, there could be 1,000 people in the room, but each person in that room is hearing what I'm saying themselves individually. Each one of them has one processing center to listen to the words that I'm saying. So I'm not talking to 1,000 people, I'm talking to one person. And just as a side note, if you ever are in a room giving a speech, try to talk to one person at a time. Look at them. Look at them while you talk to them, then move to a different person, talk to that one person, then move to a different person, talk to that one person. You'll experience a much deeper connection from what you say to the audience if you do that. So it's just a little side thing I'll give you. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on that in the future. The more we communicate, ladies and gentlemen, the closer we get. And the more others communicate with us, the more close we feel to them, even if we've never met them in person. Let's recap today's topic, which is giving people their flowers while they can still smell them. As I told you, there are two situations that happened recently that made me think of this. There are thousands of these that have happened. So I'm only mentioning a couple. I'm not saying it to impress you, but to impress upon you what I'm giving you here in today's episode. Point number one, do you want to be a person who says, I'm glad I did, or a person who says, I wish I had? There's a podcast out there called Drink Champs, where Nori talks about this. I want to make sure that we celebrate people while they're alive so they can appreciate the celebration instead of waiting until they're dead. And then we had a big funeral and the hashtags and everybody's posting about them. I'm like, where was all these fans when this person was alive? Never saw them. Kanye West did a song Big Brother, dedicated to his idol Jay-Z, did it damn near 15 years ago because he was willing to be open and say, you have done a lot for me. I want to make sure you can hear this from me while we're still here to say it to each other. You don't want to leave music inside of you in the form of words that were never spoken. Now you can never say it to the person who needed to hear it. So you robbed yourself and you robbed them at the same time. Point number 2, the person you need to tell something to may need to hear it even more than you need to say it. Employees who work at jobs and do a great job every day are sometimes never given a single word of appreciation from their boss or from a customer. Zig Ziglar told the story of how he would compliment a worker with a genuine, heartfelt compliment for how well they were doing their job, and they would get emotional because they're like, nobody ever tells me that I'm doing a great job, even though you've been here for 2 minutes. You told me. These people I've been working with for 10 years, they never say anything to me. So while it may be hard for you to say something, understand it may be much more needed than it is hard for you for that person to actually hear it. So think about that at the same time when you're struggling to come up with the right words to say what you need to say. Point number 3, human beings connect when we communicate. So you can put 2 people in a room who may be diametrically opposed in their beliefs, but if you make them talk to each other, it's gonna be hard for them to hate each other or attack each other that much, simply because when we communicate with people, the walls break down and we experience a connection with a person. It's hard to hate somebody when you're connected to them. It's easy to hate somebody when there's no connection whatsoever. So telling people how you feel and them telling you how they feel, this is what creates relationships, people. If you want to build a relationship with anyone, all you got to do is communicate with them more often. The more you communicate with the person, the stronger the relationship becomes. When you stop communicating with the person, the relationship falls apart. Any of you know what I'm talking about? Look through the contacts in your phone, how many dead relationships you got in there. Why? Not because something's wrong with you or anything's wrong with them or you're too good or they're too good. None of that. The reason why the relationship broke down is because y'all stopped communicating with each other. If you want to light a relationship back up, all you got to do is open up the lines of communication again. And guess who's going to be the person to take initiative and make that happen? You know, right? Work on your game. Dre, all